Hello and welcome to the FEZ show. It is the 11th of August 2020 and we are one day away from the final two races of the season in Berlin. In today's show, we'll be looking ahead to those final two races and discussing the latest news coming out of Berlin. With me today is Edward Hunter and Jack Pickering. Morning, boys.
Good morning.
Hey there.
We're going to start with some sort of news that's come out, and we talked about it yesterday, Jack. Okay, James Calado and the switch of Tom Blomqvist, which everybody was expecting, but there is a sporting rule which is still active, which maybe Jaguar have forgotten about, which I'd be quite surprised about. Maybe teams have forgotten about, because teams have to announce what drivers are going to be partaking in the final three races of the season. Okay, and this rule was brought into effect after the Sebastian Buemi incident where he missed the New York Prix in season 3, which effectively did cost him becoming a double Formula E world champion. And obviously then Degrassi won that championship. So, Jaguar have obviously, James Calado is in these final three races because he raced on Sunday. So therefore there's two races left which Tom Blomqvist is coming, and then the race has jumped onto this and trying to clarify if this is a breach, or because, James Calado was supposed to be racing in WEC this weekend, that, there is some form of force majeure there. But I don't think there is, because the rule states that they must, if they were to miss a race in those three races, that they have to actually be racing in another series. And the fact that Calado is only going to do a practice session, technically, because the race is on Thursday, Jack, that technically then breaches that regulation of the final three drivers who were in for the final three races taking place on that weekend. So if that makes sense, I hope that does, Jack.
Yeah, I've kind of got my head around it. I knew about the rule that means you have to announce your drivers for the last few races of the season. I'm still not a big fan of that rule, but alas, that is the rule. So we go by the rules. I'm not. I think for James Calado it makes sense. In WEC he's fighting for points. He's fighting for a championship, I think, in the 71 AF Corsa. So it's it makes sense for him to go to Spa and not hang around another couple of days and finish the same 13th or 14th. And it also gives Tom Blomqvist another chance at Formula E. I think it'll be disappointing if this whole thing arises properly. I think it does make, it makes sense for him to go, but yes, they could have definitely breached that rule that was introduced, because we had funny enough, Tom Blomqvist was the one who had to be ousted for Stefan Zarazan for the final few races of the season back in season 4 as well. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of the rule, but I see why it's in place.
Effectively, right, Ed, Calado should have not raced on Sunday. If Calado didn't race on Sunday, then this whole sort of scenario would be fine, and there wouldn't be this sort of inquest to say if there has been a breach of the sporting regulations, because Calado is now part of those three races and is technically missing now the final two. But what I find interesting as well is that, it's just one practice session. It's one practice session Calado would be missing. So there's still two practice sessions on Friday, and then obviously you've got qualifying. So yes, he would miss a little bit of running on the Thursday, but there are practice sessions on a Friday. So there's still time for him to get up to speed with the car. So in a sense, I'm like, well, he could, in my honest opinion, because this rule has been brought in to protect the integrity of Formula E, so we don't have, potential championship, protagonists, leaving. And what happened if James Calado all of a sudden won two races, right? Let's just hypothetically speaking, and he was in the championship fight. He wouldn't want to be leaving, but he's leaving now because, let's face it, he's probably not in the championship hunt. But I think because he's only missing one practice session and he gets two more practice sessions on Friday to sort of, get his head around things, I think he could have stayed.
Uh, I feel like as a James Calado fan, I can just go, oh, it's a shame he didn't do those last two races because he was dead set to win them. He was finally going to have some good luck come his way. But yeah, I disagree a little bit actually with you, Jack, because I don't see why James Calado should have to sacrifice even a practice session in World Endurance Championship. Because what if he learned something in that practice session that becomes crucial to him, qualifying on pole or winning the race in the GTE class? I think it's a little bit harsh on him to sort of to say, oh, why didn't you just sit out the Sunday race and let Tom Blomqvist go? Because then you'd have the situation where James Calado doesn't have any other commitments, but he's just standing on the sidelines, literally just because there's an arbitrary rule that says, oh, if you're not going to do the last two races, you can't do the third to last race as well. It's just a very weird, odd situation that doesn't really account for the fact that we're living in COVID-19 times where all the motorsports are restarting at the same time, and this kind of thing was bound to happen somewhere up and down the grid. And you can obviously argue, oh well, Collado shouldn't have signed for Jaguar in the first place, but the whole thing, the reason why he signed for Jaguar in the first place was because the calendars weren't set to clash early in the season, of course, back in back in the end of last year. So yeah, it's an unfortunate situation, but I'm with Collado on this one.
For me, I think Formula E are trying to do this to protect the championship, right? Because at the beginning, let's go back to season 1, season 2, season 3, even with Buemi, right? Your championship leader goes out, right, to race in a different series and doesn't win the championship. It makes the championship, Jack, look like a Mickey Mouse series, like, as in it's not really a serious championship. And that's what Formula E wanted to avoid. That's why I think this rule was brought in, because it's like, look, we understand that some of our drivers will be racing in other series, but we want you to take this series seriously. And with the level of manufacturers now in this series, it's not a championship to be taken lightly. And they wanted drivers to like Sam Bird saying, no, Formula E is my number one series, Formula E comes first. And a lot of drivers are now doing that, because there's a lot of other drivers that would have been racing in this WEC series. While Brendan Hartley was one, it's the name that comes to my mind. John-Eric Verne has been racing in the WEC as well. That would have been racing, but are still here, and they may possibly would go to Spa. We'll probably see them in Spa. But Calado's the only one who's actually jumping across for this practice session. The others have all said, you know what, Formula E is my commitment, and I'm racing in Formula E.
I think had Buemi been given a choice, I think back in season 3, he probably would have wanted to stay at Formula E, because he could have won the championship. Yes, the Toyota would have won the champion. I'm not sure. Was Porsche still in then?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Buemi lost both titles that year because he was leading both of them at one point.
Yeah. So yeah, I think had Buemi been given a choice, he would have stayed in. He would have gone to New York. He would have gone to New York, competed in those two races. But there was something in that Toyota contract that said that he had to that he had to turn up regardless. And so he drafted in Pierre Gasly, and the rest is history. Lucas won that title after Buemi bottled it in Canada practice. But yeah, so I do see the reasoning behind it. But the thing is, it made more sense a few seasons ago. Nowadays, Formula E, admittedly, it still doesn't get the respect it deserves from a lot of fans, but there is a lot. But Formula E is a lot bigger than it was a few years ago. Drivers would almost always go off to other series to race instead. I think, and in the first season, Andretti had 8 drivers in that second seat. I think in that first season, and then they had Verne and Montani in the other one. And so yeah, back in the day, it was always these drivers would go out, then come back in for specific races. But nowadays, it just doesn't seem to be the case. And So yeah, I don't see really the need for that rule, and so they'd only really leave if they had a title, if they weren't in a title fight like James Calado is.
The unmute button was sticky. Let's put it this way, right? So I've just had a quick look while you were talking, Jack, in terms of who the Formula E drivers who would be racing at WEC this weekend. Nick de Vries, first and foremost, Nick de Vries, Sebastian Buemi, Antonio Felix da Costa, and Alex Lynn. So you got 4 drivers there who obviously are missing this practice
Da Costa
session.
can go. He's done his job. He's the world champion. He can go if he wants to.
Yeah, but the thing is, right, he wouldn't have gone, especially with this championship on the fight. Alex Lynn has come in as a substitute and has said, you know what, I'm going to race those final 2 races for Mahindra.
For Mahindra to get another substitute after their substitute walked out on them would have been...
Well, the thing is, I don't think Alex Lynn would have got the drive if he didn't say he was going to race for those final 2 races, right? He wouldn't have got the drive. You would have probably been looking at Nick Heidfeld, Sam de Jong. But I think because Alex Lynn said he was going to drive in those 2 races, that got him the drive. Because I think this rule, as I said, is still active. Sebastian Buemi, obviously, we talked Brendan Hartley, and obviously, if he wanted to leave Dragon, it kind of made sense for him to depart, because if he wanted to focus on the WEC program with Toyota and focus on that, I think there's, a reason for him to do that. But then Sebastian Buemi is like his teammate, so he's missing, but he'll be there in Spa, 100%. Same with de Vries and same with da Costa. So, we've got Formula E drivers who have stated already, right, that this is the series that they want to take part in. But for James Calado, I just feel like it's just 2 fingers up, really, at Jaguar for replacing him and the situation that he's found himself in. To say, you know what, I'm not here anyway. I haven't been given a fair opportunity, so I'm just going to leave you at this point because I might as well go and drive my Ferrari.
Has he been treated unfairly? I'm not so sure because when he left and they announced Tom Blomqvist replacing him for the last 2 races, James Barkley gave a statement, saying that James has been really unlucky, and he gave a lot of credit to all the feedback and the work that he put in, and said he said he was a consummate professional, I believe was the term he used. So is that just PR fluff, or did I feel actually that he wasn't treated particularly badly? Things just, if we've seen it with a lot of drivers in Formula E, some good drivers come in and they just can't get things to work, or the atmosphere in the team isn't right. Just Jack was even talking about yesterday that Jarno Trulli, Jack Villeneuve, who are both great drivers, all I think the term Pico said was we got rid of them. I think it was more they just performed really badly, and in Jarno Trulli's case, his team ran out of money basically. But yeah, I feel that I don't feel it's 2 fingers up from Calado. I feel like it's just a scheduling conflict, and Calado has decided to choose Ferrari over Jaguar. I don't think it's anything particularly personal. I think it's just a scheduling conflict, and practice was more important to him. Formally, there's like Pico said, there's nothing really for him if he just finishes 13th, 14th.
You could argue, though, that there's nothing to play for any of the drivers now. Sebastian Buemi, da Costa, Lynn, de Vries, because the title's wrapped up. I'm sitting on the...
But they didn't know that beforehand
I'm sitting on the fence here. Well, Calado knew. Calado was still... Everyone could have won the title going into this weekend. Anyone could have won the title. It's just because, when speaking to Calado, and when Calado spoke on the press conference on Sunday, he was annoyed. Obviously, he's annoyed at how his races has gone. But he was talking about his Formula E career as if he didn't really get the chance, as if COVID-19 really sort of cucked him in a way. I think that's probably in terms of he didn't get the opportunity that he wanted, right? That he didn't get the opportunity that he wanted to actually, finish the season, to actually improve the way that he wanted to prove, Jack. And for that reason alone, he's out of the series.
Yeah, he just hasn't had the best of seasons at all. It's been it has been unfortunate, and I do think COVID-19 has scuppered his chances, because I think Ed pointed out on another show either last week or yesterday, I can't remember now. They've all the days are merged into one. But James Calado actually had a decent qualifying position in Marrakesh, and he made the top 10, I think.
Yeah, he did. That's correct.
Yeah, always trust the Calado fan. But yeah, So he was getting there or thereabout, and then COVID came in. I think had COVID not happened, it would have been a very different season. But that's what happened, and this is the outcome. And it's life's tough. This year has been awful. So yeah.
I think it's just because for me, I can see why he's not even done half the season technically before he was replaced, right? He'd driven 5 races, right? And one of them was a double header where you're brand new to the series, and that's 2 of them. So you may argue that he was on a steady incline. He said that he didn't adapt to the series as well as he probably could have. But I think it's just the way it is, and obviously now it's really interesting to see what happens with Jaguar and just follow the story in terms of what punishment they'll get. I think it'll just be a fine. I don't think there'll be like a deduction of points or anything like that. I think there'll just be fines because you broke that sporting regulation. So it'd be interesting to see what comes out. Obviously, Sam Smith at the race is chasing that story at this precise moment to see what kind of breach that is, and if there is a force majeure, because you never know, there may be a force majeure happened and which has allowed Calado to go because of the strange circumstances, and nothing will come of it. But it was a rule that I was aware of, but obviously I thought they must have figured it out. But it looks like at this precise moment that Jaguar and Formula E haven't figured this out, and I think that's why Jaguar was so certain, right, at the beginning in the press conference, in the press releases they were sending, that no, Jaguar was racing, he's racing in these final 2 races. Like, there's nothing that stops him from, in their opinion, there was nothing that stopped him from racing in those last 2 races. And obviously maybe discussions have happened since then to state that, Calado did want to go and do that practice session. But we'll just see how it is. Let's move on, Jack. Let's preview these final 2 races now that we've got that really interesting news topic out of the way. What do you think this track, in terms of this track layout, because obviously it's got a more of a technical section, as the drivers keep saying, and what do you think that will do for overtaking opportunities? Do you think it will increase overtaking opportunities or make overtaking opportunities more rare, so therefore when we see them we'll be like, oh, well done, you've set up a move?
Well, I've kind of dubbed this track that we're going to have for the final 2 races as the Bahrain 2010 track. Now, throwback to 10 years ago, F1 celebrated 60 years of Formula One, opened the season in Bahrain with an extended version of the Bahrain circuit. It wasn't a great track. They basically just they added the endurance section, and there wasn't really much overtaking, and it only really took Sebastian Vettel to have a mechanical problem for there to be a change in the lead of the race. It didn't do much. I'm not obviously F1 Formula E are completely different, and so yeah, I'm expecting different things from Formula E. But I think it's still going to be similar. I don't think we will have as good racing as we've had over the last 4 races. I think it will make it a bit trickier for people to pass. But then again, I'm an idiot. I might be completely wrong. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens. But yeah, regardless, I'm looking forward to these final 2 races. Get this championship sorted out, and roll on season 7.
And that's the thing, isn't it? We might be we might say, does it look like a track that has potential for overtaking? But then all of a sudden, it's a track, Ed, that turns up for the books and actually is a fantastic track. We didn't think the reverse layout, people didn't think the reverse layout would be any good, but it provided some amazing race in the reverse layout.
Yeah, it did, and I think it's mainly because it was sort of a circuit that in a direction that no one had already driven before, and obviously it was also helped they did reverse layout first, so the teams just didn't have enough sort of data to work with. In this case, Sector 1, Sector 3 are basically going to be identical, but it's that middle sector where they've added, I think, 4 or 6 extra corners. I think it's going to be really interesting in qualifying more than anything.
What was I going to say? But what about, Jack, in terms of energy management? Because now there's a few more technical sections, right? There could be chance to regen more energy during the race, right? And, or conversely, the energy management may be a bigger issue because the track's slightly, I think, longer, slightly slower, so the lap times will be slightly longer. And Berlin's always been tough on energy management, and that may cause some energy issues.
Well, yeah, I think I think it will be better in terms of energy management. Yeah, because of that slow section. I think people may think, oh, it's going to be a longer track, which means that they're going to have to consume more. But no, it's a timed race, which means they'll be doing less laps on Wednesday and Thursday. Than they did at the weekend and last Wednesday and Thursday. But yeah, I think in terms of energy management, it will be a lot better. They will get more. They'll be able to regen more in that second sector, lift off and just go through that new technical bit. And who knows, that might set up a really nice overtaking opportunity into the penultimate corner. But yeah, no, the thing is, we won't really find out until about 30 hours time, I think it is, to race start from when we're recording this. So yeah, we don't really know until then.
The thing is with energy management, like, the races have been so key in terms of energy management, Ed, in terms of, getting to the last lap, having 0.8%, 0.0% as they cross the line. I think there's probably more opportunities to regen in this race because of that technical section. There's probably more chance, but then there are some fast flowing sections as well. So once the technical section's over, then it's like a fast sweep. It'll be a flat left-hander probably with a lift during the race to save energy. And I think there's going to be some quick sections, and I think energy could be something. We've seen Venturi completely miscalculate their energy. They've either been one lap too long, one lap too short during these races. It could be, it could throw a real curveball.
Yeah, that incident you're talking about, I believe Massa lost his dash reading, and that was what caused that in one of the races. But I also think, I can't remember, is attack mode in the same position that has been in all the other races at that same corner? So I'm not sure that same corner is in the same configuration on this layout. So I forget whether attack mode is in a different position or not. But I think that's going to be quite interesting as well.
I think the attack mode section is in a similar place, but it won't be, obviously, it won't have the same sort of drive, sort of like how we've seen it. So it'll be slightly different with the corner sections, I believe. But I think it'll be an interesting race with whatever we have anyway. And so I think it's just, as Jack said, one to look out for and see what happens in 30 hours' time. Boys, let's talk about, though, the final two races in terms of how the drivers approach this, Jack. You're basically now essentially racing for pride. Do you expect there to see more fighting between drivers going into this, a bit more argy-bargy because, it's basically for fun? Or do you expect, because there are some places for the teams, up for grabs, that some drivers will still play this quite cautiously because obviously there are positions that is important for the team. So they might not be too aggressive with each other just to get it out the way and finish these two races with some fun because, there's a lot of money at stake for some teams.
I'll tell you what, we've got an absolutely humdinger of a battle for P2 in both championships right now. We've seen in the Drivers' Championship the last 2 days that the 9th place in the championship has leapfrogged all the way up to second, both Max Gunter and Jean-Eric Verne. Yes, the cheaters have an advantage, so you could say that Verne is settled in that P2, but you don't write anything off. I've said this countless times, and I'm sure if he wants to, Ed can make a montage out of this, but anything can happen in Formula E, and you never know what's going to happen next. So So
if Ed had a penny for every time he said anything can happen in Formula
Ed
E.
would be rich. Ed would be like a millionaire if he had like a penny for every time I said that. But yeah, no, genuinely anything can happen. So I'm just really looking forward to these final 2 races.
I think personally, though, I think obviously anything can happen, right? And that's true, Ed and Jack. I think it's very true. I think the drivers won't care too much about finishing second in the Drivers' Championship, to be honest with you. I think they will not care one bit, so I think they will be a bit more argy-bargy with each other in terms of racing. But I think, teams like Nissan, BMW, maybe not as much BMW, depending on where they qualify, but definitely Nissan, who I think, and Mercedes are currently fighting for that second spot. They might be a bit more, hey, make sure we finish, right? Don't just crash into them and try and finish in the highest position possible and have too much fun out there because, there are some serious points up for grabs and we don't want to lose out because, second for Nissan or second for Mercedes could be huge in terms of, obviously, financial income going into next season. So I think that will be interesting and how they race. I think there'll be a lot of moves. I think there'll be a lot of audacious overtakes. There'll be a lot of argy-bargy. Because the season's effectively over with Tech Cheetah winning the team's championship and obviously Da Costa winning the drivers' championship going into the final 2 races, we all know the drivers don't care about the drivers' championship now. They don't care where they finish. But, Roland did say in his press conference that, he's now racing for the team and whatever the team needs in order to get the best finish possible and the most amount of points possible. So if that means that he needs to drop back and let Buemi through, he'll do it because, he's playing the team game right now because he knows how important the team's championship is. But boys, before we go, I think it's time to pick a winner like I've been doing on the Grid Network. I'll start with you, Ed. Pick a winner for Wednesday's race and Thursday's race. Who are you going to pick?
I'm just going to go I think Sam Bird's going to win his final race for Virgin. I think that's going to be really cool. Who's going to win the race tomorrow? Probably one of the Cheetahs. I think Vern.
Okay, great choices. Jack, who do you think is going to win in your final 2 races?
Well, I think Ed. I was kind of thinking along the same lines as Ed. I think that Sam does have a shot in his final race for Envision Virgin. I was also thinking this is Lucas Di Grassi's last chance to emulate Sam Bird in having a race win in every single season. So he's got to win one of these final 2 races. And so I'm going to stick my neck out on the line and say that he will. But if he doesn't by the end of Thursday, Sam Bird will become the only driver in Formula E history to win a race in every single season, which is quite a feat, and deservedly so. He really does deserve it, and hopefully he'll have a good run at Jaguar next season. So yeah, I'm going to say Lucas Di Grassi for one of them, and then I said it last week. I still want it to happen. Stoff wins his first race in Formula E for Mercedes. It'll be Mercedes' first win. I'm going to say Stoff. But then again, we saw in MotoGP the other day, the rookie, Brad Binder, win for KTM instead of Paul Espargaro. But could be Nick. But I'm going to say Stoff for Mercedes and Lucas for Audi.
And then for me, I'm going to go with exactly the same thing I said on the Grid Network channel. Nick de Vries is going to win a race. I think it's coming. He's been super quick throughout these whole, couple of races that we've had in Berlin. And then the last one will be Sebastian Buemi. I think Buemi will get a win for Nissan. So thank you so much for watching. I really enjoyed the show, boys. Thank you so much. Remember, we have a Discord link, so if you want to come and chat to us about the final 2 races, hit the link below and come and chat to us. We'd love to, the Discord chat is growing really great. We've got over 40 people now in there. People come in. What else? Twitch. We've had some amazing Twitch streams. So hit the Twitch link. We normally stream about 8 o'clock. Obviously, we've got the live shows as well. So join us for the live shows on Wednesday and Thursday, 8 p.m. after the race. So if you're watching this today, tomorrow will be the live shows, or if you're watching this on Wednesday to get yourself hyped up for the race, come and join us at 8 p.m. tonight for the post-race live shows with me, Jack, and maybe someone else from the Formula E Zone team. Also, remember to like and subscribe, and if you really do love us, you could also check our Patreon and maybe pledge some lovely bit of your pocket money to help us out, really help support. But thank you so much for watching. We will see you for the post-race live shows. The FEZ show will be back on Friday, where we round up everything that has happened from the final 2 races and look ahead to Season 7. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you very soon. Goodbye.